Heyo, Omni Cats and Omni Dogs and Omni Kittens. I'm already messing it up. This is Omni Dog here on Omni Dog's Vault, and I am interviewing Fangirl today about her experiences at AwesomeCon 2018. How's it going, Fangirl?
Woo! It's going really good. How about you?
So far, so good. I didn't get all my books together, but I have already shown on my own video of the books I got, and I talked about some of our experiences because you and I hung out together at AwesomeCon. Mm-hmm. But how was AwesomeCon this year, and how did it compare to last year?
It was awesome. That's all I can.
AwesomeCon was awesome.
No, yeah, this was my second year going. I don't know, you've been there before, or last year was your first time too?
That was I've been going every year to it. So whenever it started, 2014 or whenever, I've been going to it. But I've only been getting books signed since last year with you and Jay last year.
Right.
So usually I was out hunting for books, and you guys have sort of gotten me into getting your book signed by the creators,
right?
Which is pretty fun to meet these creators.
Yeah, and everyone is so nice. That's one of the things that I am always kind of like. I used to be like kind of weirded out, like, oh my god, what if this creators that you love so much, and you go up to them and they're just like a-holes, but they're so nice and appreciative of you being there. So yeah, and one of the cool thing I thought this year was like they actually brought more guests than compared to last year. Like this time they had Josh Williamson, then James Tanyan, what's his name? I'm forgetting. Like Matthew Rosenberg, and a lot of people that showed up this year that wasn't there last year. And last year I think was a little bit more artist heavy, but versus this year there were like more writers that they got.
And do you feel you got to see some good cosplay?
Yeah,
I know you like cosplay even more than I do.
Right, I really like it, but the thing is, like, unfortunately, last year we get to go for like Friday and Saturday, and I feel like most of the cosplayer shows up on Saturday. This year, we get to only go on Friday, so it wasn't as impressive. However, the ones that kind of stuck out to both of us was the Moonrise Kingdom.
Right.
Yeah, two ladies dressed up as like Moonrise Kingdom kids, and they were so nice because we kind of stopped them and we were like, oh my god, that's amazing. And they chatted with us like for like 15 minutes. So that was like really nice.
Yeah, I have that picture here. I could screen share it, but I'm not savvy enough to do that. So here's what it looks like.
Yeah,
not smiling with the Moonrise Kingdom duo.
Yeah, because they were like, oh, we shouldn't smile, because we were just bursting out laughing, and then we were like, oh no, we shouldn't smile, and then we kind of took that picture. Yeah, that's like, that kind of stuck out with me. And then there was another guy who dressed up like as Yandu, and he had a baby Peter, baby Star-Lord.
Oh, I don't remember seeing that.
Oh, that's I think you went on to get someone's signature, and that guy was just passing by, so I kind of just grabbed him. But hang on, let me find that. This one over here. Can you see? Can you see that?
Oh, yeah. I do remember that now. No, I was in line with you, but you got him really quickly.
Right, but the thing is, like, the kid was not having any of it. Like, he was really annoyed about this. But the thing is, like, I thought that was like, there was a lot of dedication. But and also that this lady, that dressed up as Okoye from from the Black Panther movie, like, her ball cap was like perfect. Like, at one point we were both like, do you think she took it so far? But she was really nice too. So yeah, like there was like a lot of interesting cosplay that was going on. But as always, it's always the Saturday. That's the time to go. They do their cosplay contest that day as well. So
And that's typically when I do not want to go because it's more crowded.
Oh my god! Like Saturdays are like, if you go there, you're pretty much standing in line for every creators. Like, this is like, I've been to 3 cons so far, and that's one thing I learned, that you want to get all your signatures and meeting and greeting out of the way on Fridays, because Saturday you're standing in line for hours pretty much, and then the lines are they're cutting it off because the creators themselves are busy with different panels, so you do not want to save any of the meeting and greetings for Saturday.
We stood in line for an hour and a half for Snyder and Capullo, and that was
time around. Like, even the last year, we ended up being there at the same exact time, but we were like 7th in line. This year, I don't know whether they're more famous or more people coming to AwesomeCon, but we stood in line for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, but we did the, like, you know, the clever thing of, while we were waiting in line, each of us were going and getting other creators and talking to them, and then coming back and just waiting in line again.
Yeah, so we really made good use of our time. We had all our signatures almost by the time we got to Snyder and Capullo.
Right, and the last person was like a couple of other people that we got left, but yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that you went to get Colleen Doran and told me to go over right away because there was nobody there for her, so I did that first thing.
Right. And the thing is, like, also, like, the one that kind of stuck with me was Andrew Aydin. He's the writer for March, the March trilogy by John Lewis. He's the artist for it. Right? I think, yeah, he is. But, you know, he was very handsome. That's all I could say, because I came back to Jess, and Jess is like, "Why are you smiling like that?" I literally had like I literally had like hurt eyes, like, you know, just walking around, and then even later, like, I was passing by his booth and just like, ha ha ha. Yeah. So about it.
Yeah, I didn't even get to see. I don't know. Did you stand in line for Sean Gordon? Because this year, his line was way long.
I know, because last year there were no one. That's also another thing. Last year he had no one. You could just walk up to him. This year there was like, you know, 60, 70 people in line, and I was like, since when he became this famous? You know, and his assistant was laughing at me because I was making fun of that.
Yeah, I think White Knight is what put him over the top.
Right, and the thing is, like, that's pretty much, like, you know, what he kind of been doing. So I think that's kind of got him to be like this huge star. But you know, we saw that the oversized hardcover of Tokyo Ghost. They had like I think 8 of them, and then 10 minutes later we came back and they were all gone.
Did he have sketches in them?
No, there were no sketches. And that's also another thing. He's no longer doing sketches. I was like, ooh, because we got him to do like sketches last year. If you bought books from him, and he would, like, I think for extra $40 he would do, or $25 he would do a sketch. This year, no more.
Yeah, and those weren't really even sketches. Those were like drawings that he did for us.
Mm-hmm. Like, they were like proper, I mean, you know, like and he did a Batman for me, and then, you know, then there was another one that he did, like the Tokyo Ghost, what's his name? Well, I'm forgetting the character's name, but anyway, that robot. Yeah, the robot character, he did that. He's like, yeah, it looks like, you know, you took a really good care of your trades. I'm like, yeah, I mean, okay.
Okay, Sean. Okay, Sean.
Yeah, okay, Sean. I was like, so yeah. I wasn't a creeper. I may appear as one, but I wasn't.
You sure? No, okay, you weren't.
But the highlight was, though, like, meeting Lila del Duca. I didn't know anything about her, but you introduced her to me.
We almost walked right by her.
Right.
We did walk by her, and I said, "Oh, wait, Shuttered. That's a really good book," and it's written by Joe Keating, and there was nobody in her line. I was like, "Oh, Freya, you need to know about this book." And we walked over, and she couldn't have been nicer. She was I think that was the highlight.
Yeah, like she was like we just stood there and yeah, but like talking to her about working for Image, working for like a big two, and how she kind of got it to started drawing like started drawing and things like that. And we also like she signed every one of her books. Like we bought each, like you bought like the 5 trades for Shutter, and I did too because I was like, Jess is buying it, I should buy it too.
Mm.
And then I also then I also bought her book like that she wrote, but she didn't actually draw, like Afar, I think that's what it's called. I mean, that is what it's called, I just can't pronounce it. But but she did a cool thing, and like she also signed and did a little sketch in there.
I hadn't seen that. That is cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, like I was like, I actually didn't notice it. Then I was like kind of looking through stuff later on. I'm like, oh, that's kind of sweet of her. So yeah, I'm kind of interested into reading about this. I don't know anything about it, but she was so nice. I just had to buy it.
Somebody in the group said that it was a really good book.
Oh, okay. That's in that case, like
definitely.
Yeah.
Now we are getting some feedback. Is there any chance you have earpods you can use?
I do, but I have to go get them. Just give me 1 second.
That's fine.
Yeah, keep talking.
Okay. Let's see. Avi was asking about your Zenith books, and let me show you my Zenith book, Avi, because I know how easy it is to photo bait you. So just a sec.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Avi, this is the hardcover book of Zenith that you could only get from 2000 AD. I got this a few years ago. You had to mail order it, and it's really hard to find. As far as I know, it wasn't available in retail stores. As far as I know, you could only get it from ordering from 2000 AD or whoever I ordered it from back in 2016 or whatever, 2015, whenever I got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got them off the group for like very cheap. Like, I didn't know much about it, and then I think like so I was like, it was Grant Morrison, and it was for a very cheap price. So I got it. Haven't read it yet. So yeah, I'm one of those.
Nick is jamming me up for saying mail order, which is true. I ordered it over the online. Okay, sorry, an online order. Showing my age by saying mail order. Yeah. Right. So Avi, this is a whale you need to get, the Zenith hardcover. And you're in England, and it was printed in England, so maybe it'll be easier for you to find.
Oh, that's like contain the whole story?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I kind of like this because look, they kind of have that all, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, it makes this bed over here.
They did a good job on that. It's really nice looking.
Yeah, it is. I had no idea that it was like, a whale thing. Then again, I didn't know, like, this was all the purchases that I made when I first started collecting. And, I would just buy a lot of random stuff. Now I became smarter since then. So, yeah, so pardon me.
I'd like to think I got smarter since I joined the group, but I don't know. I feel like I still randomly just buy stuff,
Hey, you never know when you start getting like, gems out of it. Like, so as you're buying random things, and you're like, oh, this is really good. Like that's how which book was it that I recently? Oh, DMZ. That was the one. Like I randomly bought it because someone talked about it, and now it's like my 7th favorite book ever.
Right, 7th. Okay.
Yeah.
It is a good book. I like that book.
Yeah, it is. It's like talks about. Like, I think we talked about it last time. Talks about like war and all of that.
So let's see. We saw Snyder and Capullo and Matthew Rosenberg, James Tinian.
Snyder remembered me. That's the highlight. Like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I met you last year. I'm like, ah!
I bet Tom King would have remembered you too, because he remembered your name the next day we went on Saturday.
I know. But the thing is, like, and then Snyder made a joke. He's a very quiet guy. Like he doesn't like talk that much. But he was like, oh yeah, it's kind of nice that you came back. That means I didn't disappointed. Like you weren't disappointed by my writing. I'm like, are you kidding me? I love your Batman run. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. That's really nice, and blah blah blah. So we talked about that, and also how Batman was made to look so dishy in like by Capullo in like year zero and stuff, like 0 year and things like that. And he's like, oh yeah, we had a competition going with the Nightwing crew, like to see that who can make it more handsomest. I'm like, oh, great.
You know, this is exactly why I like you. You're with Batman and guy characters the same way I am with my bombshells.
Right.
We have crushes on these fictional characters. I think that must be one reason why we get along so well.
You want to talk to me about like crushes. Like I recently, we're gonna start talking about Alan Moore. I now have a crush on a tree, so which is kind of weird, like Swamp Thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, that's awkward. That's really awkward. I have a tree. I have a plant over here. I'm just looking at it weirdly. I'm like, I didn't think of you that way before, but now I am. Please pardon me.
Right. Oh, I'm looking at my books. I do have them all here. We also talked to, first of all the creators were really nice.
Right.
I haven't had a bad experience with a creator yet. We talked to Sam Humphries, who signed our My Green Lantern books.
Right.
He already had number 5, which hadn't come out at the time. He was great, and Lila del Duca was great.
Right. Well, Sam Humphries, like he was just like like he was talking to us as if like we're his buddies. Like he was just like telling all excited about about writing Harley Quinn. And also it told me that how he recognized my shirt, and he's gonna tell Chelsea about that. We teased him that, oh, you're name dropping.
Yeah.
And then later on, like when we were walking outside of the convention, we saw him, and he stopped by to take a picture with you.
Yeah, and it was like we were buddies.
Right. Like he was really cool. The other person that was so super cool like that was Joshua Williamson.
Yeah.
He was like I was just standing there, and he's like, oh my god, you have to see, I did this. I like I'm drawing this thing for like Justice League. At that time, I did not make the connection that both Tynion, Williamson, and Snyder are all talking about the same Justice League, the No Justice that they're writing. But he was like, yeah, I need to show it to you at some day. That I'm like, when are you gonna show it?
Did he end up showing it to you?
No, he doesn't have the drawing with the art with him. But he was telling me like, yeah, I need to show you the concept. It's just gonna be so awesome because I'm gonna be doing. And I'm like, dude, like, how many copies you had? but yeah, he talked about like Nailbiter Volume 3 that they're planning on getting it out on during the Halloween time. So yeah, he was talking about like how great it is. So I told him like, also, are you going to be leaving Flash to do this Justice League thing? He's like, they'll have to kill me to get me off Flash. I'm like, whoa. Like that's intense.
That's one thing is how engaging they were. That's how James Tynion felt about writing Detective. He was like, oh, it's my dream book, and it's like Batman X-Men book. I can just write everything I want, and they're letting me do whatever I want, and I'm just so excited.
Yeah, and he talked about that he has a very interesting storyline with Cassandra Cain that he couldn't complete with a detective, but apparently this is a scoop, you guys. He's talking to DC about doing something different, like maybe a mini series with it.
With Cassandra Cain.
That's what he was saying. I don't know. It's one of those things. He probably had the idea, but
that's a scoop. Heard here first.
That's a scoop, you guys. Yeah, but Matthew Rosenberg, he also apologized for how he played with my emotion with 4 Kids in the Bank. 4 Kids Goes to a Bank. I actually went up to him. Yes, that's one. 4 Kids walk into a bank. I actually told him, I'm like, I hate you, by the way. I just need you to know I hate you. What you did over there, that was not cool. And he's like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, apologies accepted. But yeah, so him and Tyler Boss is doing another mini series that's starting in September that he talked about. So I'm excited about that.
That's one reason it took so long to get through the line for Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, because they were talking to everybody for 5 minutes. Like, it wasn't just signature goodbye. It was like, hey, what's going on? And if something was going on, you just got into a conversation with them. And I mean, they were genuinely listening to you and giving, talking back to you. They weren't looking around or anything. They were actually making eye contact.
Right.
And
like, because I was telling Capullo that I want a statue of Batman on a motorcycle from year zero. And I told him, I'm like, make it happen. I'm like, you were powerful enough in DC, make it happen.
what did he say?
And then he was like, I'm writing it right down right now. Just joking.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, but he was telling, because Snyder talked you out of buying some trades, and he's like, dude, what are you doing? You're not gonna get the royalty.
I asked about the metal omnibus, and he said, Snyder said, the metal omnibus is going to be so great. It's going to have every single tie-in, all the issues, plus it's going to have all this extra sketch stuff done by Greg and everything. You shouldn't even buy the trades. Don't worry about the trades. They're going to be coming out first. And Capullo leaned over and goes, dude, you totally cost us money there talking him out of those trades.
That's right. But the thing is, the saddest thing was, though, and that's something I realized the day after, and I texted you, there was like another gentleman that's sitting with them. And we thought that they were their buddy, like he was their buddy, right? Later on, we found out he's the colorist for all their work, Jonathan Glampion. And and I had the book that he colored, and I didn't get him to sign. Then I actually took it from Capullo and didn't pass it on to him. Like, I am mortified by that. Next time if I meet him, I'll have to say sorry, because it's like, I did not know that he is that person. I thought that he's their buddy, just sitting there.
Well, I agree. I feel the same way. But in our defense, they didn't have a name tag in front of him.
Right.
He wasn't advertised. He was just sitting there, and had they put a name tag in front of him, and these guys had said, "Here's the colorist," you and I both would have jumped on getting his signature. But he was very quiet, and he posed in the picture that I got with those guys. But I had no idea till you said afterwards that that's who that was.
Yeah, I felt terrible, because I was like, oh my god, that's not cool.
Here's a good question for us. Tips on going to your first con, from RJ. That's a really good question, because it can be an overwhelming experience. AwesomeCon is big, and Baltimore Con, which we've been to before, is even bigger. And I will just say, you either have to be with somebody like Faria, or you have to be Faria to enjoy a Comic-Con the way we did, because Eisenhower didn't have D-Day planned out as well as Faria did about where to go. She had the whole thing laid out, who we were going to see, when we were going to see them, where they were. And that was a huge help, because I just sort of, glumped in there, was just like, yeah, I'm going to get some signatures, I guess. And you're like, here's what we're going to do, and here's where they are, and this and that. And then we break for lunch. I'm like, okay.
So, I mean, you're being very nice. So the thing that I usually do, and it's like, depending on what you are trying to go to any of the cons for, if you're trying to go get signatures, then there's one plan. But if you just want to go for people watching and wanted to get some books and stuff, that's a different kind of plan. But one thing I'll have to tell you, and there's something that both Jess and I do, is that have a nice suitcase with you to carry your books. Like, because cons are usually huge, and to be carrying them around, it's not good. You're not gonna be happy. You're just gonna feel like bad. So if you have like a 4-wheel roller bag that you can just keep your books in and carry them around, that you're gonna have the best time possible. But yeah, and also the planning of it all, it's not a big deal, because usually all the creators are lumped together, then all the artists are lumped together. So depending on who you want to see at the day of the con, arrive 2 hours early, and then you can get the map from them, and you can just map it out, and then kind of do your round that way. So it's kind of helps that way.
I was much more comfortable this year. Last year, I brought a backpack, and I was miserable.
Yeah.
This year, I brought the rolling suitcase. And I will say another tip is to make sure you have extra room in your suitcase, because you'll probably be buying books from the creators or that you find, and you don't want to have an overstuffed bag. Fortunately, I left room because I ended up buying, all 5 books of Shudder from
Lila?
what's her name? Yeah, Lila. And I mean, I bought all 5 of those. Then I bought a book from Colleen Doran. I bought a couple other books. So, and we didn't even get to the book portion of the con,
right.
which I would say is another tip. Is if you can, if it's like a 2 or 3 day con, try and break it up, because if you try and get signatures and books in the same day, you'll be exhausted, because we just concentrated on signatures and we were pretty tired. We were pooped by the end of the day.
Right. And the thing is, like, and also one of the kind of crappy thing about, especially for AwesomeCon, and in Baltimore, I think is a little bit better, is like the food is terrible. Like, you have to think about going outside to get food at some point, or either bring it with you. So yeah, that's also something to keep in mind of. Also, like, speaking of, like, getting good deals doesn't happen until the last day. So it's I know that some people in our group showed up, like, we like kind of show off, like, oh, look at this omnibus I got and stuff. I've never seen that. I don't know about you, Jazz, whether you've seen that. Most of the retailers hardly ever bring any omnibuses, and the trades and hardcovers they bring are the same price, are like the retail price. So until it's the last day, you are not getting any good deals, because that's the day they really want to get rid of it, so they don't have to carry things home with them.
Right, that's a good point. That Sundays is the day to get deals. I haven't seen in my experience any whales or any great deals. I know last year that John Wilson found a couple of books that he was really excited about.
But he's from England, so he's excited about anything. Like, I'm just kidding. But the thing is, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of price-wise, like, he was excited about because of that. He got he got some one of the books that he was telling us that in England Amazon they were costing like 150, but he got it for like $30 over there.
Right. Yeah, that was in Baltimore.
Right.
And Nick brings up a good point that you need to wear comfortable shoes and wear deodorant. I will say that that cons have improved from the old days, because people are wearing more deodorant. I will say that, because my first cons, of course, dating back to the 70s and 80s, were exclusively guys behind the counter and walking around. And now there's tons of women creators and cosplayers and just families there, and it's much different atmosphere than it was before.
Right. And that's the thing, that like every time I go, I haven't been to like earlier cons, but all the cons I've been to, it looks like a family affair. Like, people show up with their families. Like, it's like, one of those things that, oh, let's go to the con today. And it's a completely different, and the cons are now in a more bigger place, so I don't think smell is an issue. But I'm yet to meet a creator that smelled funny. So
well, it's not the creators that you usually have to worry about; it's the clientele that usually.
That's true. No, I mean, I took pictures with like a bunch of cosplayers and things like that, but I haven't come in contact with one that was kind of smelling funny. So,
okay, lucky you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, there's room for that to happen. I'm just saying up till now.
Yeah, Ricky C asks, what conventions would you recommend going to on the East Coast that are coming up? I can talk about 2 that I know about. I know I'm going to Baltimore, and that's really well run. Lots of space, very open, with tons of creators and lots of booksellers of floppies and trades, and lots of toys and lots of everything else.
Right. And one of the things about Baltimore Comic Con this year, Garth Ennis, Brian Azzarello is going to be there. Peter Tomasi will be there too, as well as Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Tom King, Sean Gordon Murphy, Terry Moore, Last year, Walter Simonson, they're gonna be there too.
Mm.
Yeah, but last year Mike Mignola was supposed to be there, but he canceled in a very last minute because of health issues. So did George Perez, but I'm kind of really keeping my fingers crossed that they show up this year.
Is George Perez supposed to show up?
Last year he was, but then he
Yeah.
canceled.
I know,
Yeah.
and he's the one I really had my heart set on meeting besides Mark Waid.
Right. Oh, yeah, Mark Waid. He's going to be there too. Sorry, I'm just keeping track of the ones that I want to meet this year because I met everyone else the year before. But yeah,
Right.
like, you know, he will be there too. And the thing is, they're always updating their guest list. So, you know, keep an eye on it. And, you know, I'm going and, you know, you're going. So
Right.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. Heroes Con is the other one that
I was going to
people
say
talk about.
that. Good, yeah.
It's in Charlotte, North Carolina.
I haven't been to it, but this year I was thinking about going to it. I know Titus is always asking me to come down and go to it with him. That is supposed to be a really great con.
Right. And the thing is, like, one of the reasons I really want to go, Joella Jones will be there this year. So because if I go there with my shirt and take a picture with her, oh my God, you know, like, ask me about my feminist agenda shirt. That's what she did. Like, you know, it was her design, her cover. If I could go and take a picture with her, like, that's the only reason I'm like, I want to go. But yeah, she will be there too.
That would be, where did you get that shirt?
I got it like T Fury or something, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was like someone sent me the link, and that was the only site that had that color because everyone else was kind of printing it on a different color shirts, but that color was only available there.
I should get that shirt. That'd be
good. Yes. Oh my God, then we should totally just rock up to the thing. Cons are the only place you're allowed to be weird. Like, you know, embrace your weirdness or like, you know, whatever, like non-conventional, like they call it convention. You can be as unconventional at a convention. Like that's the place to be. So that's one of the reasons I really love cons.
Yeah, that's a good point. We were in our element there.
Right. And the thing is like, even like every year though, there's always this one person that is like, oh yeah, I know we're nerds, but we're not that kind of nerds.
Yeah.
Like they're just anyway, I don't want to talk about it, but you know, there's like, you know, some people can be a little like, you know, I'm like, yeesh.
Yeah, and we really didn't even there are long lines. AwesomeCon had a lot of television and movie stars. I know Dave Bautista from Guardians of the Galaxy was there over the weekend and got his picture taken with Jim Starlin.
Oh yeah, Jim Starlin, we missed him because, you know, he was kind of still, it was in his lunch and stuff, and we were just kind of like, we're too tired for it.
Yeah, at that point we were like, I can't stand in another line because I knew he'd have a line and I just couldn't stand in it.
Right, and your buddy Neil Adams was there too.
Who wants to charge you for looking at him? So I did not go into his booth.
He had a giant booth. We were like, wait, what's going on over here? It's like, oh, it's for Neil Adams. So we're like, check, no. but yeah, he charges like, I think $50 for a selfie or something.
I think it's $25 for a selfie and $40 or $50 for a signature.
Right. And we're like, no thanks. You know, Jess is like, well, is he gonna give me, like, can I pay him to observe his behavior?
Yeah, I would pay $20 to observe his behavior for 5 minutes just to see what he's like.
Right. And he apparently, all what we heard, he's a very nice person. So, you know,
that's fine. I don't have a problem with him personally at all. Not at all. I'm you know, more power to him for doing whatever he wants. I don't have a problem with him personally. I just think it's funny how he charges you for the air that you breathe around him. So we had let's see, another question. No, I'm not going to go to an anime con. Maybe if Sherlock ever visits, he'll take me to an anime con.
Oh, speaking of anime con, that's called, there's one in Atlanta. I think it's called Dragon Con.
Oh, okay.
I think that's more video game and anime based, but you know, it's not my jam, so I don't know much about it. But you know, if someone can talk about that, yeah. But there's one in Atlanta. I think that happens around October timeframe. But yeah,
there was actually one. What month is this? April. I think back in February there was an anime con over at the Gaylord across the bridge from me. In Maryland, there was an anime con, but I just don't know enough about anime at this point to go there and be interested. But you know, you never know.
Right.
I may be watching more.
The most one of the most ridiculous. Well, you know, I'm sorry, I'm making fun of it, but it's like in Fredericksburg, Virginia, they did a con in a shopping mall. So you have your regular people who are shopping and stuff, and you have all these people showing up in costume, just walking around. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. But the thing is that I didn't know there was a con going on at that time, and I just kind of walked right in because I wanted to get something, and it was really weird. And I was like, this is kind of like, you know, the universe of powers, you know, the by Brian Michael Bendis, where people have superpower. I'm like, this is that universe. I just walk right into that universe. Or like top 10, you can talk about that too, which, you know, kind of a good segue for our Alan Moore conversation.
Oh yeah, top 10. That is a good segue.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, so when you walk right in, because it's not exclusively for a con, you have all these people just dressed up and looking ridiculous.
And I think anime cons get a lot more cosplay. Like everybody dresses up for those.
Right.
It sounds like.
Right. Yeah, and that's also another thing, though. That if you really want to go to cons to meet celebrities and stuff like that, be aware that the charge is very steep. Like, you know, photo ops can be very expensive. So that's something to be aware of, especially Stan Lee. It's, I mean, you know, I don't think he's coming to any more cons, but last year when he was in AwesomeCon, he was charging $200 for one signature. And he's not even talking to you. You hand it over to his handler. The handler passes it on to him. He's like, hello. And then my friend did this. And then there was like he took a before and after signature, like before when he was in, like, you know, back in 80s and 70s. And now it was pretty much just a scribble, like just like this versus proper Stan Lee. So there's like a little bit of that too.
Yeah, he was at Baltimore too.
Right.
And people, God bless the guy, 95, and he's still going to cons and stuff. I mean, he's, as far as I'm concerned, he could charge whatever he wants.
That's true.
And I personally am not going to pay it, but I say anybody that wants that, go for it. That's I mean, he's a living legend, so that is cool.
That was one of the things that last year, like Frank Miller, on the other hand, came to Baltimore Comic Con, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get Frank Miller to sign something, and it was like $100 for one signature.
Oh, I didn't even tune into Frank Miller last year.
Right, like, you know, he was he came to because he was only there on Saturday, and I got to meet what's his name? The guy who made I'm kind of blanking out. The one who drew Frank Miller, and who's the guy who made who was the artist for the Frank Miller Daredevil?
Klaus Janson?
Klaus Janson, yeah. So I met Klaus Janson, got him to sign my Daredevil thing, and I was like, Frank Miller's gonna be there, I get it. And then they're like, oh, it's $100. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, no thanks.
Oh, okay, I do remember your...
Yeah, I'm not paying more to get it signed for a book that costs less than that. So I'm like...
Yeah, so sorry, that's another thing you need to do if you're going to a con. Bring plenty of cash. You don't want to if you've only got $20 on you and you want to get a signature that's $50 or $100, you're going to be out of luck. And ATMs there are going to charge you $3 or $4 or whatever for your withdrawal. So make sure you bring a lot of cash. Make sure you bring food and water, or you know where you can eat. Check out parking ahead of time too. You want to make sure you can park close, or see if there's public transportation to a con, because believe me, at the end of the day, I don't care how old you are, if you're 20 or almost 60, you are going to be wiped out pounding that pavement inside the con. It's not like it's all carpeted. So
Right.
you're going to be tired, and you're going to want to be either close to a metro or some kind of public transportation, or close to your garage, because your bag is going to be full and heavier than when you came in, and you're not going to be wanting to hump it 5 blocks to go back to your car.
Right. One thing I actually realized, like for Baltimore Comic Con, it's going to be awesome for me this year because I live about like 20 minutes from where the convention center is at. And I already checked my Uber or Lyft. It's about like $10, which is like, if I'm getting a parking over there and carrying it versus they can drop me in front and then pick me back up, it's just going to be even better. So yeah, I'm already kind of planning.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you are a planner, and that's what I like about you.
Right.
So you need to have a plan. You need to get the information ahead of time and have a plan. You need to stick to your plan. Try and not get sidetracked, or leave extra time for you to be sidetracked. Figure out what's really important to you and put it in that plan. Wear comfortable shoes. Get your ticket ahead of time so you can just check in real quick.
Right.
Let's see, wear comfortable clothes, bring a suitcase with wheels.
And as Nick pointed out, wear deodorant.
I personally would not recommend bringing a child unless that child was like 15 or 16, because kids are going to get wiped out, like sensory overload. I get wiped out with sensory overload when I walk into Baltimore Con. It's so big. But I don't know that I'd take a kid with you. And make sure you have plenty of food and water, or that you've figured out where you can take a break. Take breaks, because you're going to need breaks.
Right. And that's one of the things I don't like about AwesomeCon, though. And I wrote it in their survey. There's nowhere to sit in AwesomeCon. But in Baltimore, there is a resting area that you can go to and you can sit and hang out for some time and come back. There is none of that in AwesomeCon. If you want to sit, you have to get up, walk all the way. Like it's not worth it. Let's just say.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's good that you put that in there. It's good that you put that in the survey, because there is no resting spot like there is in Baltimore.
Right. One thing, you were asking about like the difference between last year and this year. They were much better organized this year. That I would say. Yeah. Like in terms of like getting people in, because last year it was like a nightmare to get in because everyone was lining everywhere. You didn't know where the line began and where it ended. This year they were like stand over here, here's a line. They actually put tape on the ground, and everything was like much easier. And there was no like scuffling and things like that.
Yeah, every year it gets more organized at AwesomeCon. The first couple years, the line was around the block just to get in the place. You had to hang outside. So now they're more organized. Now that it's bigger, they're way more organized getting people in. And I love the cosplay thing. I love that there's weapons check-in for cosplay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which is actually kind of scary when you think about it. But there's weapons check-in for cosplay. If some of these cosplay things, you're bringing a big hammer or a chainsaw, or your Prince of Persia with a big sword or something, you got to check. You got to make sure if you cosplay, you got to make sure that you have time to have your weapons checked.
Yeah, but what was the funniest thing? And this is something I was like, I roll my eyes, in terms of like they were letting us in with our suitcases, never checking what's in the suitcases.
Oh, they checked me.
They checked you?
Yeah, they checked my suitcase. They didn't check yours?
No, neither time, because they were asking, what's in the suitcases? I'm like, books. And they're like, oh, walk that way.
Books.
And the thing is, like, if you look at our color complexion, I should be checked about more. But, but I was like, okay, you sure you're going to let a brown person in a suitcase? Because they said that they have books in them, but, oh, well,
Well, they definitely checked me.
Oh, okay.
They wanted me, too.
Oh, really?
They didn't do that to you?
No, you probably had a suspicious look about you.
It must be. They racially profiled me.
Oh my God.
Old white guy, check him out. When you think about it, yeah, I would, some old white guy, I probably would check him too. You never know.
But yeah, that was like, but the thing is, like, if you are gonna be doing cosplay, still wear comfortable shoe, because we saw some cosplayer who really wanted to look like themselves in, like, really wanted to be true to their cosplaying, and they were kind of limping towards the end because the shoes weren't comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm just looking through some of our pictures here. This guy, I can show this picture because you can't see his face. This guy was definitely dedicated. He walked around in a Reptar the whole time, and that takes dedication. And I remember last year there was somebody from Saga with a TV on their head, and they were the characters with a TV on their head.
Prince Robot 5 or 4. Yeah, but the thing is, like, so this raptor guy, you didn't capture it, but the thing is, like, if you look at the background, he brought his kid with him. So he was actually, see, this is his kid, like his little kid. So, as I was walking away, he went up to the kid and was going, like, trying to hold it, and I'm like, that's so cute. But I didn't take a picture of that. But yeah, and last year we also saw Hazel, Elena, and Marco. Like, there was a little baby. Like,
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, from Saga.
Yeah, that was the cutest thing ever. But well.
Yeah, so we had a good time, and I'm going to be tagging along Baltimore with Omar. He's coming up, and I think he thinks I'm going to be his cameraman so he can interview a bunch of people. So we may have to have a talk. I don't know that I feel like being his cameraman for 3 days, but he's getting his press passes, so maybe I do have to be his cameraman for at least one day.
Well, I can take over, like, on Saturday or something. I don't mind. Just, point and shoot, right? And then, don't get up to people's business too much.
Right. Well, he'll bring a camera with him, and he's good. I've seen his on-air interviews. He's been doing this stuff for a long time, so he's really good. He'd certainly be better at interviewing somebody, because I'd be like, "Oh, where do you get your ideas?" And that's about all I can think.
Is that your Chad voice?
Yeah, that's my interview at a con voice. Hi, how are you? Practically Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh my god! That's kind of so weird, because you're like, oh, okay, I don't wanna judge people, but the thing is, like, you have a normal voice, but as soon as you enter the con, you become a super nerd and like, hi everyone, like, hello.
I know. Well, it is a big deal for me to get up out of my chair and to get out of the house and go to a con. I tell my therapist about it, so she was proud of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
My boss was like, "Oh, so how was the con?" So, like, did you cosplay? I'm like, I'm not that kind of nerd. You don't need to use that tone with me, okay? I'm not that kind of nerd.
That tone.
Yeah, like, he was looking at it as if I'm like radioactive or something, but it's like, you don't need to take that tone with me. Yeah, but he's always kind of more wowed by how much, like, random geeky shit I know. So
yeah, that's awesome that you put him in his place.
Right, but okay. So do you want to talk about Alan Moore now?
Well, sure.
Unless there's any more questions regarding con. I think someone asked.
Did somebody ask a con question, or did we?
No, I think one question someone asked was like, what's our plan for the free comic book day?
Oh, uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know. Are you doing anything? Last year I went to Third Eye.
Yeah, free comic book day is insane at Third Eye. Like everything is at Third Eye. It is
right.
Super big, super well organized, and it is still pandemonium there. I mean, it is the best customer service comic book store I've ever been to.
Right, they're like the IST of NSC.
Right, but Third Eye attracts a lot of people, like thousands of people. Free comic book. Are we talking about free comic book day or local comic book day? Oh, free comic book day, forget it. They get like, I'm not exaggerating, 8,000 people for free comic book day.
Right.
No, I am not doing that. Free comic book day, I wouldn't be surprised in their new place this year if they got 10,000 people. And I mean, they've got setups outside and multiple cash registers going inside and people just handing out free comic books as fast as they can. And it's still just a huge scene that is so not my style. I just not a crowd person. So
yeah, in case people don't know, you're very anti-people. So that's something to know about Jess. He's very anti-people. But no, I went there last year because they were announcing their new location opening. So anyway, I kind of wanted to have wanted to have fun or try to understand what this is all about as an experience. So I showed up the day before and I actually put my camp chair in there. It was really a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to kind of meet people, talk to them, and meet a lot of geeks and nerds and things like that. But will I ever do it again? Hell no, because it is massive. It's like a lot of people, and it just by the time it's no. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's not like that at every comic store. I mean, Third Eye always makes it a huge deal, and they are really a well-run comic book store to do that. I've been to other free comic book days where as a matter of fact, I got some whales at a free comic book day one time. Let me think when this was. This was probably 2015, and I actually forgot it was free comic book day. So I went to a couple of places up near Baltimore. It was just a random Saturday that I thought, and I walked into this store, and it was free comic book day, and it was the festivities were over, but it was 30% off all books, all trades, and that's where I found my Bendis Daredevil 1. They had it marked at 150, but I got it for 30% off, which to me was close enough to cover price. And I think I found a couple other whales there. I'm trying to look to see what other whales that might be where I picked up my Simonson Thor. That was marked at $150. I got that for 30% off. And I have a feeling that those books were not supposed to be sold for 30% off because I got like Exhausted Clerk number 5 at the register. The store is empty. There was paper all over the place. And I just put these books on there and said, gosh, this is great, 30% off. And he goes, yeah, sure. And so I got out of there as fast as I could because I found 3 whales there for 30% off, and I have a feeling that maybe he got reamed out by his boss the next day.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, I'm last year I actually got Green Lantern statue, the one with the Hal Jordan doing this, and had a kind of weird face about him, like Kotobukiya, I think. And I got that for 30% off. So that was kind of nice, but it was one of those things. No, but they did say that they are putting that on sale, so it was okay. I didn't rip them off.
Here's Sam von Kluxenberg, who knows my life better than I do. Jess, didn't you get the Bendis Daredevil 1 when you outbid a kid at a convention? This was back in 2013 or 14 at a convention, a small show. It was actually Bendis Daredevil 2 that I got, and I did outbid. Bid a kid. He was a kid, probably 12 years old, and the bidding started for this Daredevil Bendis Volume 2 at $5, and pretty soon it got up to $40, and at $45 I won. And I just looked at the kid, and the kid looked at me, and I said, sorry, dude. It was a 12-year-old kid.
You know what? I'm sorry, but the thing is, tough lessons begins at an early age. I'm sorry, kid. You should have your money with you. Don't try to fight with us adults with money. That's a given.
Yeah. I felt kind of bad, but at the same time, I was like, yeah, $45 for this Omni. That's cool. And I hadn't read the run yet or anything, and I still needed to get the first Bendis so I could read the second one. But Sam, yeah, you were close. That's actually scary how close you were on that question. It's a little frightening.
Is he a Facebook worker? Let's ask him that question. How
Sam
does he know
always
that
asks these way weird personal questions that obviously I have said something about, but he has a memory like a steel trap, man. He remembers everything I say. So I'm sure it's somebody from the Facebook group it's probably somebody from the chat. I know that's not his real name, but it's probably an admin or something that I don't know about. That's somebody that I confidentially tell stuff to, and then he brings it up in these chats.
Well, you know that it's not me, unless plot thickens. But
yeah, that's true. I don't know that it's not. I don't know that it's not you. That's true.
Right. But yeah, cons are fun. I really like it. I mean, I don't know, your like idea of, you've been going to cons way more longer than I have.
Yeah, and you have a more outgoing personality than I do, so you tend to see the more positive side of things than I do. Whereas you'll see a big crowd and you'll go, "Ooh, maybe there's a chance there's cosplay," and I'll say, "Oh, F word, the line to the bathroom's going to be crowded." So that's how you and I look at things a little bit differently. But Lloyd Wong asked,
like a good con team.
Yeah, that's right. We complement each other. Is there a major convention you guys would like to attend, like Chicago/San Diego, that have never been to?
Never.
I wouldn't go to San Diego now. I went to it back in the 70s when I was 16 or 17, and it was just comic books, and that was fun. But or like New York Comic Con, I don't think I could take the crowds and the sensory overload that would be going on in there. And I know that's where you can get, especially like Emerald City Con and New York Comic Con, that's where you could get special variant pops and really cool comic book variant covers and stuff, which would be great. But you're fighting with literally 80,000 other people, and I just don't think I could do that. And it's not age related, as much as everybody likes to make fun of my age, which is fine. I'm just happy to be here, so I don't care. But I was that way back in my 20s too. I was not a big fan of crowds at all.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm not even with whatever age or my bubbly personality I have, I can never think about going to San Diego. I mean, forget the whole saga you have to go through in order to get your tickets, but oh my God. I mean, it's a different beast. I may consider going to C2E2 next year, but it really depends on who they bring, because they always have a very impressive guest list, but it's also like a matter of cost and price and all that. So,
Yeah, I tend to like to go to little local shows more than I like to go to big cons, because if I'm actually on the hunt for books, that's what I like to go to. John the Uncanny says, "Hey, Jess, come to Vegas for the AmazingCon. I am coming to Vegas in November for the Adam Hughes signing at Torpedo Comics. So as much as I'd love to go to Vegas twice in 1 year, I'm saving my Vegas trip for November for Gabe and I to eat at In-N-Out 3 times a day.
In-N-Out is the best. Oh my God. Like it's
right?
It's gonna be best. I live when I lived in Salt Lake City, that's where like every time I would get upset about whatever reason, and I used to get upset a lot in Salt Lake City, that's all I had. That's I would just eat. And the thing is, like, surprisingly, I don't know what they put in them, I never gained any weight. So it's one of those magical food. It's gonna make you feel good, and you're even not gonna eat it. You're not even gonna gain weight. But yeah, so it's like, I hated that. Like, the only thing I hate about East Coast, they don't have In-N-Out burger. Like,
Yeah, Gabe said there's one like 2 minutes from his house that's getting built that should be done by the time I go out there. So he said, we're going there at least twice a day. And I go, okay, dude, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about con going.
Let's see. WonderCon is still my favorite. I think that's in Southern California, right, John the Uncanny?
Seattle?
Seattle has the Emerald City Con,
Oh, Emerald City. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe WonderCon is in Southern California, so that's not too far away for Vegas to go. I know John the Uncanny lives in Vegas, but
Okay.
Anaheim, yeah.
I do want to go to this one, like would really wanted to go to this one con just to see Chris Evans, but I my sister's like, are you sure they're not going to have to tase you to get you separated from him? I'm like, that's a very good point. So that's one of the reasons I didn't go.
Where was that going to be?
I think it's somewhere like it's somewhere in East Coast, but it was like a cool, fun city, and it wasn't too far. I remember checking it all out. But yeah, I have to get back to you. But yeah, it's like it was supposed to be really fun, and I was like, no thanks, But it was like, I think like to meet him and Sebastian Stan together was like $750 to $1,000. I was like,
wow,
no thanks.
That's a lot.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, we can turn our attention to the Alan Moore segment of this. Alan Moore, of course, the writer of Watchmen, Swamp Thing, Promethea, Top 10,
V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta. Let's see.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's
League of
also
Extraordinary Gentlemen.
And by the way, okay, so this is something that I found out yesterday because I was kind of looking. No, it was something that I knew before, but it was reminded to me yesterday because I was looking up some Alan Moore stuff for the live stream today. Tell me two characters that Alan Moore created from Green Lantern lore.
I believe he created what's his name, the planet.
Right.
The living Green Lantern. What's his name?
Mogo.
Yes. He created that, right?
Yes, and he also created. I don't know how to say his name. Like the Sodom.
You broke up there. What was it you said?
Sodom.
Sodom Yat.
Sorry. Sodom Yat. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, he also created Sodom Yat, and he also is the person who is responsible for Blackest Night storyline, because the entirety of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, he actually wrote a spec script for that back in 80s. And one of the idea of like the green being affected by the yellow light is something that he came up with. And then I think Jeff Johns kind of took that inspiration. Jeff Johns, Peter Tomasi, and all of them took that inspiration and then wrote their seminal run. But yeah, it was actually Alan Moore who came up with a lot of this.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, and then he made he was was not happy that when Blackest Night storyline was coming out. Like he had some very not nice things to say about that. Like it's morally they're bankrupt idea wise, and they're using all these things that I came up with, and then they're writing this spectacular run. I'm like, that was a backhand compliment, if you ask me. But yeah, he was the one who came up with all of this. And Mogo was supposed to be just a one-off. Like it was a part of like an annual, a 3-page when this girl, this lady, Green Lantern, it was Thomas Ray, who was telling her like, oh yeah, there's Mogo doesn't socialize, and then it was in the end you realize that Mogo is a planet.
The story, well, I tried to find it because it's in the DC universe of Alan Moore, and this bounty hunter goes and looks for Mogo. He lands on this planet.
Right.
Waits for months and months and months. He's constantly calling out Mogo to come. He's ready to battle him. And then at the very end, it turns out the guy realizes that the entire planet is Mogo.
It is, yeah.
And he flips out and freaks out and realizes that, the entire planet is a Green Lantern, and there's no way he can beat him. And I really wanted to show that, and I just couldn't find DC Universe by Alan Moore, which is, I told you before we went on the air, really frost my cookies because it's one of my favorite books, and it contains that story. But yeah, that's an amazing creation, and I don't know how to address the Alan Moore DC relationship. It's fraught, you could say. It's very He's very anti-DC. I know that DC took liberties, I guess, with some of the things. I mean, he was dead set against Watchmen being made into a movie. He didn't even, I can't even remember how they treated it in the movie. I think they just said it was created by Dave Gibbons. He said, I don't want my name associated with it. And DC's position was, we're sending you checks, with enough cash to choke a horse for creating it still. What's the deal? And I mean, I'm sure you can go online and find out the whole history of Alan Moore versus DC, but I don't really feel like it's my place to comment on it because I've witnessed none of it, and it's all third hand at this point. So, I mean, I'm sure in some interview you can find out exactly why Alan Moore is upset with DC. I don't know how they'll handle the Absolute that's coming out, I think, in December. They're going to have to pay him for it, so they have to know his address. So they're going to have some place to send the checks because those books are going to sell like crazy.
Oh my God!
But I'm not well versed enough in it to. And even if I did, I don't know that my channel's the place to discuss something like that until I get an interview with Alan Moore. And then when I interview Alan Moore, then I'll ask him.
Right. I mean, Alan Moore is known for, I think he's a very staunch anti-religion. And, he's a different person. Like, he's not your typical writer. That I would wonder how he would react at a con, because we were discussing it. I'm like, oh, I wish we could meet Alan Moore, and you're like, he'll probably sacrifice all of us to whatever devil he worships. So yeah, but honestly, despite all of his personal stuff, that is one talented writer. Wouldn't you agree? Like everything he writes.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah, there's no questioning his credentials. I mean, I've told this story and I tell it all the time, but it's worth telling again. With Watchmen, he, since that, I think, in my opinion, that's the story that put him on the map. Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns happened to me in the same year. I think Dark Knight Returns came out first, but
that was Frank Miller.
Yeah, by Frank Miller. But those two books totally changed comic books. From what they were to what they are today, because I'm not trying to be the gatekeeper here. I'm just saying this was my experience growing up with comic books. Silver and Bronze Age comics, with a couple exceptions like Green Lantern, Green Arrow 76 through 89, and some of the Spider-Man drug issues, weren't really relevant to people's tastes were changing, and DC and Marvel weren't really changing with them. People wanted something more sophisticated, and they weren't getting it. I mean, to me, Bronze Age DC, I know a lot of people out there have a lot of love for it, so I'm not going to bust on it. I'm just going to say it's not for me. I was bored with comic books at that time in my early 20s, and Watchmen came out and was, I mean, it was like nothing ever had been written before like it. The scales fell from my eyes, and I just read this thing. I just uncovered the floppies the other day from when I got it. It was once a month, as I recall. It actually came out on time, if I recall correctly. Back in '86, I remember getting it. But they gave him. I don't need to explain how he came up with the story. It was supposedly it was going to be Charlton characters that they wanted him to redo, and he completely redid them. But nothing like it had been written. Nothing as sophisticated as that book had been written yet, and I think it changed comics forever and for the better. I mean, it was remarkable.
So Watchmen is actually one of the first like comic book I read that was not your tip. So my comic book story is like, I started with Tintin when I was a kid, then I read Killing Joke and Dark Knight Returned at some point in 2005 and whatever that time is. And I read like a couple of things here and there, but nothing, it wasn't as focused, or like, I didn't understood like there's things called runs, there are things called writer change and all of that. I was just reading whatever was coming to me. But Watchmen I read because I heard that the movie's coming in. So I'm like, oh, and they were having it for sale at like Chapters. I was living in Canada at that time. And I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, and without knowing much about comic books or like, the how character like that, the fact that this was like really deconstructionism of comic book industry and all of that, without knowing that, it was still a fantastic read. Like, in terms of like the emotional depth, and then also like the idea that, people changing or like living in the glory days that you are no longer living, having way too much power, or have like, the how power corrupts, all these ideas was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think that shows the broad appeal of the book, that I was a jaded comic book reader and you were a brand new comic book reader, and yet it impacted us the same.
Exactly. And that's something like you don't see that a lot. And and especially like after that I was like, oh my God, who is this person? And then I realized that, oh, the 2004 movie V for Vendetta that I really saw and loved so much was actually a book by this person. Then I went and read V for Vendetta and my mind was ever blown away, because that was another book. I mean, that's like, even now I'm kind of like hooked by it.
Yeah, that was a remarkable book.
Right, that's my my scientific review of like.
Well, I know I get those scientific reviews. I know exactly what you mean. I read Watchmen, which turned me on to Miracle Man, which turned me on to V for Vendetta. I read those all around. I mean, just kind of in a row, and they were all, to me, he's one of those guys that really shows you what the medium of comic books is capable of. Because people tend to, of course, to this day, people dismiss comics. I think Neil Gaiman is the one that says, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, art is considered a medium and writing is considered a medium, but you put them together and all of a sudden it's stupid, but it's really not. I'm paraphrasing it badly, but he and Neil Gaiman and others are the ones that really showed you what comics are capable of. This is one that I have a soft spot for. I mean, also Killing Joke is a great Alan Moore, Brian Boland book. Which I didn't pull out, but somebody asked in the chat, is it worth the buy to get Absolute Watchmen? And I would say yes. I don't know if Absolute Watchmen's in print. I mean, I could
don't worry about it. It will be back in print. Like, that's cash. If everything stops selling.
Something's going on with your audio.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
It's breaking up really weirdly, like you're talking through a synthesizer.
Can you hear me now?
No, you sound like
you sound like a rebel.
Yeah.
How about now?
Okay, let's see if we can. No, then that way I get an echo.
Oh, okay.
Try plugging back in again.
How about now?
Okay, now you sound better.
Okay, technical difficulties. Sorry, you guys.
Yeah. I think it's worth it because this is one of the few books that got a recoloring job that I think actually improves the book. Everybody knows I'm not a fan of the recoloring that Neil Adams did for Batman, but in this case, excuse me, for Absolute Watchmen, the colors really pop, and that's the first book where I became aware of the color palette and how much, this is something that Riley and Luis both pointed out to me when we did a Watchmen deconstruction on Omnibros, was how important the color palette was to Watchmen and how effectively the colors were used. I think it's important in the Absolute Watchmen because it got recolored for the better. The colors are even better, and don't detract from the story, but help enhance it. So I would say Absolute Watchmen is worth the purchase. If it's affordable, if it's not, whatever, you can always get the 9 different deluxe versions that come out of it. The only thing I would not purchase is an uncolored version of it, because the colors are so important to it. One of the books that I love that I got in deluxe edition is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which was back when he was still on speaking terms with DC. And of course, this is a book that's near and dear to my heart because it wraps up the Silver Age of Superman in a brilliant way. It wraps up the Silver Age of Superman with Kurt Swan art, and who was the classic Superman artist in the 60s and 70s. And it effectively wraps up and finishes off the Silver Age Superman. And in it, I mean, everybody's in it from the Silver Age, like the Legion of Superheroes and Crypto and Mr. Mxyzptlk and all kinds of people are in it. And he effectively, wipes them out so they can start over. And this is the only time in comics that I've actually cried because of this scene. It just breaks my heart, of Crypto defending his master and getting kryptonite poisoning right there.
No.
And I know I actually got choked up because this is it's ridiculous that these are just made up characters, but I love Crypto. I grew up with Crypto, and he sacrifices himself for his master, and it's really just an amazingly written wrap up to the Silver Age. And I think only Alan Moore could have done it, and they have him doing it brilliantly. And this book also contains a Superman and Swamp Thing crossover.
Oh, nice.
Which is, and now that you're into Swamp Thing, you could really appreciate it. But one thing, it contains another story. Let's see if I can. Oh, yeah. For the Man Who Has Everything. That's a famous Alan Moore story where he gets a gift in his Fortress of Solitude that takes over his brain.
Oh my God. That was in one of the. It was one of the episode of Justice League animated series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was it's in Justice League animated series, and it's also, Alan Moore is not gonna like it. That's the same thing. That was one of in issue number 9 of Jeff Jones, 9 or 10 of Jeff Jones' Green Lantern run. It's the same story of like that, those Flora thing taking over, and then showing him that Krypton was never actually blew up, and he's like, having a family over there. That's like there's an episode over it, and it's one of the. You were talking about crying. You would cry in that, like crying at a cartoon was a new thing. Right. At that time, Pixar wasn't around, so I didn't know to cry at animated things. But that episode in Justice League animated series, it's amazing, and it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah, I think it's the first appearance of Mongol. Maybe it's not, but that's who delivers the gift and tries to take over. And it's got Batman, Robin, and Wonder Woman in it, trying to figure out how to correct it, how to save Superman. And it's super well written, and it's just and it's got Dave Gibbons art, and it's just because when the book starts and you realize what has happened to Superman, this is one of those weird things where you're actually absorbed by the story, and you go, oh my gosh, this is the end of Superman. How does he get out of this?
Right.
And of course, Alan Moore's smarter than I am, so he's figured out how Superman is going to get out of it. And it's just, it's an exciting story. That's also included in the DC universe of Alan Moore that is somewhere here in the Batcave that I'm just going to tear this place apart looking for it.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of continuing on greatness of that is Alan Moore, Swamp Thing. Let's talk about that. I recently read it. This has been on my list for a very long time, and I'm so sorry that it took me this long to actually have read it. This was one of the, I don't even know. I don't know. I don't have words to describe just how awesome this book is. It plays with every one of your emotion, especially the issue called the burial. I'm sorry about my accent.
That's
where
fine.
where he actually, this is, I will always remember this, because what happens was he gets into another world, and he's still kind of upset that he's no longer Alec Holland, and he goes to this feast where these demons are actually, so he gets his ex-wife that who has also died, so he takes her body and is like, okay, I'm gonna save you, and then he comes across these demons who are feasting on this body, and it was the body of Alec Holland, and then they're like, oh, come along and eat with us, and then he's like, well, I can't because you didn't left me anything, and they're like, oh no, we left you your humanity, and it was pretty much the skeleton that's left, right? And he actually left the wife and carried the skeleton, and he looked at her and said that, I'm sorry, I can't carry both of you, I just carry one. So he carries his humanity and then just runs away. It was the most, I don't know why I'm getting kind of all choked up over here. It was one of the sweetest thing I've ever read, and I think I fell in love with something instantly for that, because he was so childlike in his curiosity, or he's still a new, because he pretty much was just born at that time, because we later find out that it's like an old thing that your consciousness transfers into trees, and then the trees become sentient and all of that. So he's pretty much a child at that point, and to him, he would rather carry his humanity. He's holding on to a skeleton as a symbolic, he's kind of still confused about it. And I don't know if there's any other writer that can effectively transfer that information.
Right, I agree with you on that one, because Swamp Thing, I started reading Swamp Thing back in House of Secrets, and then went on to his own book, and it was always an odd character,
right.
an odd and interesting character, but then you give it to somebody like Alan Moore, who makes it so different and so unique and so interesting. I love it when a writer writes something and I just go, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. I don't know how he got there. I can't wait to see where he takes it, because that really is the beauty of comic books, is that it's such an elastic medium in terms of being able to, take it someplace that our preconceived notions normally wouldn't let him take it. He pushes outside that and takes Swamp Thing into such a brand new, totally interesting direction that you're just like, wow, I didn't even know Swamp Thing was capable of this. And the Parliament of the Trees and the green and the whole concept, you're just like, wow, this is why I love the medium of comic books, because it is so elastic and can it takes you in so many places that you just never thought of yourself, and which is why the really great writers get all the acclaim they get, because they deserve it.
Right, and I think Alan Moore, Brian K. Vaughan, and Neil Gaiman kind of falls under that same category, that they can do that. You will start it, you will look at the synopsis, and you will kind of set your mind in one way, and then as you're reading it, you are like, whoa, what? I did not see that coming. And Alan Moore is consistently does that. And even with his next one, one of my favorite, and I actually downgraded because I'm not a big fan of absolutes, so I downgraded it to Trey's Top 10.
Oh yeah, Top 10 is so wonderful.
Right. It's about a world where everyone is a superhero, and now it's a police force kind of trying to keep them in check. So there is a lot of comics with the same genre. Boys desperately tries to be that, but whatever. But the things like Powers is another one by Brian Michael Bendis. That's kind of like in the same vein, but Top 10 does it completely different. It's pretty much like, a social commentary on our current situation. It has it has all different diverse cast, and their diversity is kind of they talk about it very openly and all the different struggle that they face, and it's different. You won't find that like any other writer would make it kind of creepy or make it kind of like ugh, but Alan Moore does it so well that you were actually like, yeah, this is a social commentary that we're reading about.
Right. And Top 10 along with Promethea and Tom Strong.
Right.
Some of his, I think some of his best post, I think that was at a time when he said, I'm never writing superheroes again. And then he comes up with Tom Strong and Top 10. And we're like, well, dude, these are superheroes. But they're not superheroes like you'd ever expect. Like Tom Strong, especially the first couple books. The whole series is great, but the first few books is just stuff you're like, he's a super scientist in science, like a science city where science rules. And Tom Strong is a remarkable being. There's a arc in Tom Strong where the Tom Strong from another dimension comes looking for the Tom Strong that we know to get some answers. And to show how far the guy's traveled, they show him literally walking on planets, running on planets through the cosmos so he could get to this Tom Strong. And I'm just like, I would have never envisioned a superhero, that big, that desperate to get where he's going. It takes him years and years to get to his destination. And here's some Promethea. This is Promethea book 1 in absolute form. I have a hard time explain. It says J.H. Williams the third art, which is and great colors by Mick Gray. I have a hard time even explaining what Promethea is about. It's about mysticism and a woman who embodies Promethea. She goes through several changes. I was blown away, but I can't really explain it really that well. I won't say it was over my head, but it's kind of inexplicable to explain just what's going on in here. But look at some of the paneling, some of the artwork, and the coloring that goes into this book. Ostensibly, it's about a woman that embodies Promethea in several different incarnations, and the adventure she goes through. It goes through 3 absolutes. I read it in trade paperback form and then decided that I wanted to get the art in a bigger format. But I mean, here's a good example of what you can change into. It's just not a book that I could have ever imagined being written. His imagination and his ability to translate it to the written word is really remarkable.
Right. And that's something that, I kind of connect with him about, is that exactly what you said, is that I wouldn't never, especially the relationship between Abigail and Swamp Thing, or the way that is kind of portrayed. I don't think about it that way, but, he made it not creepy, because, a relationship between a woman and a tree, like, that's like, I am now being like, you know what? I'm on board. Like, to be able to say that, I don't think like a lot of writers can actually do that. And that's something that I was like, other than like Tom King, Brian K. Vaughan, and Neil Gaiman has his ups and downs, but I think like they all have that same thing. It's like even their worst, it's still kind of like, you know what, I can see where you're going with it, so it's not the worst.
Right. Well, I will address the chat because it's a heated conversation in the chat, and I'm not going to get into saying who's right or wrong because it is so subjective. But we are talking a lot about more in the chat, and all I ask is that everybody stay respectful of each other's opinions. But he's like anybody else. It's a subjective thing as to whether or not he's the greatest comic writer ever. That's a matter of opinion. So everybody just keep in mind that it is subjective. Some writing is for some people, some writing is not for some people.
Like, because the thing is, you and I, we almost kind of had a fight in the convention floor because I said I hate Hal Jordan, and you told me get the hell out of here. Like, remember? Like, it's like, yeah, like, it's okay, like
it wasn't a real fight.
It was a fight.
Our first fight.
Jess.
Yeah,
it was a fight, Jess. Like, and Sam Humphries was just standing there like.
Yeah, we were at his booth as we were getting our book signed by him.
And then he's like, I like Jon Stewart. And we're both just looking like, no one asked for your opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. Like, it's okay. Dudes and dudettes or whoever you are. Like, it's like, if you don't like him, that's fine. It's not for you. I'm not selling. I'm not his representative. I'm just telling it's like how I felt about the book. So it's all good.
He's one of the writers that he and Warren Ellis are two of the writers that so far I haven't read anything that I haven't liked by them. I mean, it is subjective, and I'm not saying Warren Ellis is the equal to Alan Moore. I'm just saying they're just two of the writers that so far everything I've read by them I've really, really liked. And that's a pretty tough thing to do, given all that I've read. And I'm not trying to be all gatekeepery here. I just want to make sure everybody knows I don't claim to have any special knowledge of comics just because I've been reading them for so long. But he and Warren Ellis and those are two of the guys. I'm looking around my room to see somebody else. Even Mark Waid, who I worship, has written stuff that even Greg Rucka, Mark Waid and Greg Rucka, have written things that I didn't care for. But that's not the case with Alan Moore. I just have really liked everything I've read by him because it makes me think differently about stuff.
Right, and I think it's even like to me, his worst writing was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Like, especially volume 1 was great, and then volume 2 comes along, and you're like, is it the same person writing this? But the idea is the whole concept, like the concept that he came up with. Whether the execution made sense or not, that's a different issue, different topic. But the thing is, like, someone to come up with that idea and especially me, who is creatively absolutely bankrupt. So, I'm sorry, but if you impress me enough, I'll be impressed. Some people talk about things like, oh my God, this writer is not so good. Yeah, but what did you write?
Well, you have to be able to criticize somebody. You have to be able to criticize, I can criticize a painting if it's not to my taste, even though I'm not a painter.
That's not, I know. What I'm saying is, like, I try to be a little mellow in my criticism. Like, unless it goes out of its way to insult a group of people, I try to be like, a little bit more polite, like, a little bit more, just cut people some slack is all I'm saying.
Right. Well, no, I totally agree with you on that. I'm the first to say that certain books aren't for me, and if somebody else enjoys them, that's great. I'm glad. But I don't actually know where I was going with this point, so I'll let you try and talk, because right now words am coming hard to me.
Words am coming hard to you. I mean, I don't know. I don't have much else to say. Like, I wanted to ask you, like, if you wanted to talk about Alan Moore, because I just recently finished Swamp Thing and pretty much blown away. And then I started thinking, like, it pretty much came to me. It's like, I actually have not read a single Alan Moore thing that I did not like to a degree. And that's where today's chat topic came about. So yeah, I don't have much else to say about that.
Yeah. Now, have you read any of his current stuff, like Neomnicon,
and Providence.
Providence. Yeah, those are pretty hardcore and twisted.
Right, I have not yet, but actually, like, you know, my sister did a cool thing for me. Like, she actually ordered the slipcase for me.
Oh, that's on the Kickstarter?
Yes, but you know, I mean, it's in the sense like she's like, oh, I saw something. I know you talked about this writer, and so yeah, so she actually kind of got me a gift card, and you know, I ordered it for that because of that. So I'm kind of waiting to get that and then read it. And also From Hell, I haven't read that.
Oh gosh, we haven't even talked about From Hell. He's written.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on that?
Well, that I have that in a slipcase version. I read it back when it was coming out in floppies. I can't even remember when it came out. He also wrote something called Big Numbers with Bill Sienkiewicz that had 2 issues, and then I fizzled out from there. I don't know. I can't even talk about Big Numbers because it was like a square bound comic book that was. I cannot even tell you what he was trying to accomplish in that book. And I'm not saying it was bad writing. I'm saying I just couldn't understand it. It's kind of like
we, the little people, could not comprehend that.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Ulysses with James Joyce, how it's,
oh my God,
how it's so different, abstract kind of painting type of book. It way pushes the boundaries, and it was so different and so. I'm gonna say it's me. It's not him. It was me. I just was like, what are we even talking about here? And I got the next issue and I was like, I still don't know where we're going with this, but okay. But From Hell was one of the most researched books I think I've ever read, because it's got the slipcase I'm looking at right now. It's got the story, and then it's got the annotations of where he based the story and where he took the Jack the Ripper murders, where he was writing the investigation of it, where he actually draws a conclusion as to who it was that committed it, as well as describing the atrocities and the murders and the investigation. He actually brings it to a conclusion, and what he bases all his writing on. It's almost as if From Hell is that big, then the annotations are that big. I mean, it's remarkably well researched, and you walk away from it saying, wow, this really could have happened this way. It makes total sense.
And if Alan Moore was a detective back then, it would have been solved.
Yeah, it probably would have been. Now, the only issue, of course, is you have to be an Eddie Campbell fan, and Eddie Campbell is the king of scritchy scratchy art, and you either like scritchy scratchy art or you don't.
Is that the actual term for it?
Yeah, he's king of the scritchy scratchers, and it's effective in this case. It's black and white, and he does really well with it. But if you're not a fan of that kind of art, you're probably not going to dig the book. But it's a remarkable case study in a writer and his research, and putting out the way he feels things happened based on all the research he did. And it must have been a monumental task to do all this research, because he bases it all on real life events and where the arrow points.
So it's kind of like his Truman Capote in Cold Blood, kind of like, you know, it's a real, it's nonfiction, right? It's not fictionalized version.
Well, it brings in an awful lot of real life characters, and it's his supposition of what happened, whereas in Cold Blood was more like what did happen is told through a different set of eyes. But this is his supposition of who the murderer was.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily completely nonfiction.
Right. I mean, it's
like Zodiac by
right. Yeah, it's what he feels happened. Yeah, could have happened, right. And it makes sense.
Yeah, that's one book that has been on my list also for a very long time. And I don't, yeah, I think the trade version is still available, but.
I think so too. And I think it came out in a hardback, hardcover kind of omnibus thing.
Yeah,
I got the trade paperback.
Yeah, hardcover is probably like, I think that's the hard to find one. But anyway, but that's
interesting. In the chat, Forgerelli says Moore has acknowledged his theory and From Hell was wrong. Okay.
Well, listen, if you whatever you read, he actually then went on to denounce Swamp Thing was bad. He gets rid of everything. Like he will write something, then he's like, I didn't like it. Like, it wasn't good. So that's his trademark.
Well, it's still an impactful book that makes a lot of interesting points that even if he I mean, to me, that shows a writer's ability to go back and reflect on his own story and examine it and say, well, the conclusions I came up with were wrong. It's not a case of his denouncing Dark Horse or whoever published it.
Right.
He's actually looking at himself and saying, I
could have done it better.
Yeah. So Forgerelli, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to be like, we could have drawn Dr. Manhattan's dong a little longer. I would not doubt that he would.
That needs to be the name of a rock group, Dr. Manhattan's Dong.
Dr.
That'd be a great name for a band.
Listen, I am so glad that Dr. Manhattan is being incorporated into DC proper, either by the Doomsday Clock or whatever it is that they're doing now, because I feel like this blue dog that's been hanging out on top of everyone in DC, never like it's just an ominous presence just there, never doing anything. So I'm glad that they're incorporating that into the DC universe.
I'm still, since I'm a trade waiter, I'm a year behind everybody on that. So I'm glad that people have been respectful of that, especially in the Omni group, and haven't spoiled it. Because I don't even collect the trade paperbacks. I collect the deluxe editions. So I'm really way behind. If I had collected the trades, I'd be up to speed to a certain extent. But since I collect the deluxes, I'm way behind.
Right. Well, I think that was just I didn't like. I know that he's involved. At what capacity? I don't know. Like, what's the background on that? That's fine.
Here's a good question. Fangirl and Jess, have you ever felt uncomfortable about Moore's treatment of women? He gets accused sometimes of misogyny in his writing, but I think there are other writers who are worse offenders. That's a really good question.
Right. So it's kind of strange though, because I feel like he portrays the misogyny more as a real life, like, what would happen in real life kind of way. Especially I'm looking at Abigail Cable's treatment, what happens because, they find out that, she's in love with this tree, and then, but the thing is that the women themselves are written fairly strongly that you don't even often see them as victims. At least that's, I didn't read everything of him, so I can't comment on that. But from what I've read so far, it just feels like that way. And especially his Barbara Gordon's treatment in The Killing Joke, there's a lot we can say about that. But at the same time, one of our friend Ryan Says recently pointed out that out of that came out Oracle, who became a symbol for disabled people, right? So there's always if you look back, it's like, okay, at least something good came out of that. So it's kind of hard to talk about it.
Yeah, and
I think that's one of the reasons I didn't like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because Amina Harker was kind of weirdly portrayed. So it's one of those kind of tough topic to talk about.
I have to admit that I haven't picked up on it in his writing, and usually I'm pretty sensitive to that kind of thing, especially with Dave Sims on Cerebus. That's like the ultimate misogynistic writer. So much so that I had to stop reading Cerebus. But maybe I haven't been tough enough in my reading of him to pick up on that. I will start paying more attention, because I do need to reread Promethea, and first I'm going to read Irredeemable this week, because I've got to get that reread and do a review of it. But I found Promethea when I read it to be very strongly, very strong, independent female protagonist, which I really like. And I'm trying to maybe some things in Swamp Thing and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen just went over my head that I wasn't paying attention to.
I think, like, it's like, to me, the way I usually typically look at it is to see that even though a woman is a female character is going through some bad situation, that is because they're a female, whether they can come out of it in the upper hand, if that made any sense. Like, I feel like that the female characters, they're going through some tough things, but in the end of the day, they are still come off being strong. I mean, I hate using the word strong female character, but they come off being like, they have a normal arc. They're not just a supporting character or just a love interest or damsel in distress, that they have their own life and everything going on. And from what I picked up from most of Moore's writing, they are kind of like that, especially if you read Top 10, where the things that the women were going through in the police force, the female characters were going through in the police force, it's not something you don't see in real life. So it was more of a reflection of social commentary than, oh, look, just because these are women, they're going through this. I mean, you see that kind of thing in real life police force as well. And that's what Moore was trying to portray.
Right. And Forgerelli says, I found Cerebus unreadable and I read everything.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what Cerebus is, but
it's an aardvark that Dave Sim's own personal philosophy regarding women is just sent through this aardvark, and the way he treats the women in the book. And then he goes on in the books, he'll have a foreword or an afterword and then just rant about women, and it's just really off-putting. And I know that Cerebus is popular with some people, but it's not popular with me. And this is a case where I will just say, I don't care if you like it. Dave Sims it's one thing if you have a political philosophy and you write a book, but when you have your political philosophy starting to filter in and become your book, then I have every right to dislike it and dislike you. It's different than if somebody has a different political viewpoint for you and is the colorist on a book that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
It's free to separate the two, but when the book becomes your political rant,
soapbox,
I'm out, and that I am out on. Melanie Cleveland says, as a woman, I loved The Killing Joke. Didn't bother me one bit, but it is troubling that the editor, Len Wein, gave permission to Alan Moore to cripple Barbara Gordon by telling him, cripple the bitch. Ooh. Have you heard that story?
No, I have not, but
I don't like that either. No, I can see that is troubling. That troubles me too.
Because the thing is, like, and we talked about it too, is that, before, it's like, it's one of those things that when there is not enough female characters, like female, superheroes to go around, and at that time, Barbara Gordon was one of the shining, one of the top ones, or one of the famous one, very similar to like a Wonder Woman, and then you take her out of the picture, that's problematic compared to, let's say, if you do it to a bunch of straight white male characters. That's my viewpoint of it. Mm-hmm. But the fact that Gil Simon later took that, or I don't know much about DC history or who brought it, and then brought her to Oracle, and then she got to overcome all of that and then become Batgirl again. I think that's a positive thing, but that story,
that's real locker room talk. I don't care for that.
Because I kind of had respect for Len Wein, because he created, he's no longer with us. I think he passed away recently.
He did,
yeah. So it's like he's no longer with us. So it's kind of one of those things, like, I
have never heard that story before, and since I don't know anything about it, I prefer to reserve judgment. If it happened, it's not cool, but I have never read that, so
right.
I don't know what to say.
A part of me actually kind of, and it's, then again, I can't speak for the artist or for the creators, but part of me kind of makes me think that Alan Moore doesn't necessarily care about male-female character in that way. If you know what I mean. Like, I feel like his gender, it's kind of different in the sense that he's just looking at it how the story is going to be driven or the character. I don't know. It's but then again, I haven't read everything by him, and it just is like just a feeling that I got. Like, I didn't see his treatment of most of the women are something that he's going out of his way. Something like the Garth Ennis does all the time. But, he's not going out of his way to be misogynist. But the things that happen is something that you will see in current social, like, in society happen. In something that will happen in real life.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the video camera and have it on you.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna
when you
happen.
approach Garth Ennis at BaltimoreCon and tell him what you thought about The Boys. That's going to be an epic moment.
God. The same person who created Tulip O'Hare. Tulip or April? What's her name? Tulip from Preacher.
Oh, yeah.
Say, like, that was just, no. Anyway, but yeah, I'm going to tell him. That's something that, I told Jess that I'm going to do in Baltimore Comic Con. I'm going to walk up to him and I'm going to tell him that was not cool. But I love everything else you read.
Yeah, I'm going to want to get that on tape.
Yeah. Ugh. But oh well. Anyway. Sorry,
okay, well, Melanie's saying that all those people involved with it, Alan Moore and Len Wein and Denny O'Neil have all given the quote. So maybe it happened. Okay. We're on record as saying if it happened, it's not cool.
Ooh, it's not cool. Then it's not cool. Ooh, definitely not cool. Yeah.
Well, we've sort of taken two different subjects and pretty much exhausted everything about them, although I have a feeling we could talk about Alan Moore and his impact on comics for a lot longer.
Right.
But I think we've definitely
speaking of, sorry, before you wrap up, Evie,
no, it's fine.
Or Evie from V for Vendetta. She was a very strong female character from what I remember. Like, Evie, what's her name?
Yeah.
From V for Vendetta. So it's always depressing when the same person can write a female character that's strong or that interesting, can turn around and then say dumb shit like that.
Have you seen the movie V for Vendetta?
I did, and I really liked it. I think I'm on the minority here.
I haven't seen it, but I thought I had heard that it was decent. I want to see it still. I still haven't seen it.
They did make some changes, and some of the characters have been cut out, but it's I really liked it. But then again, it was at a time when any movies, I was like, that is awesome. Like, it's so, take it with a grain of salt.
And we agree that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was a horrible movie?
No, we didn't.
I know, I said that I didn't hate it.
Yeah, we both said that we liked it. And that was also one of those things that I was telling people that, oh, this is so awesome movie. Until I rewatch, I'm like, oh, that wasn't an awesome movie at all.
It's one of those weird movies where you watch it the first time and it was like, oh, fun. And then you keep watching it as you get a little more experience in movie watching. You go, holy crap. What were they thinking?
Yeah, and I think, because I read all of those characters, like I read Dracula, I read like Nemo, I read like Nemo. Dang it, like 20,000 League Under the Sea. Like I read all of those characters that was in the book, in the movie, and I'm like, oh my god, that's my superhero team up movie. So, I was like, that is awesome until I rewatched it. I think like about 4 years ago, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't good. The same way, like, when you go back and watch some of the Warner Brothers cartoon and how racist they were. Like,
oh my gosh.
Like, you're like,
or even Disney cartoons. Some of those Disney cartoons I showed my daughter, like Dumbo and the Aristocats. They have some really racist stuff in there, and they're still putting them out.
I know, like, and it's one of those things, like, okay, never forget. So.
Well, I think it's important not to whitewash them and to take those parts out, because that shows where society was at the time.
Right.
And it's important to know those things.
And yeah, especially like they were so sexist. Like that was the older like term, MGM or what is it? Turner. I think they used to put out all this Hanna-Barbera. Yeah, Hanna-Barbera. Some of these cartoons were like, oh. But anyway, sorry. Yeah, you were wrapping up.
No, that's fine. If we can go on an interesting tangent, I like that. So that's cool. That's fine with me. I just thought we were done with the subject. But if you want to talk about racist cartoons, that's as interesting to me as anything else.
We can do it for part 4.
Yeah.
Come back and talk about racist cartoons.
That would be some interesting. That would be some interesting research, because I know for a fact, I can't remember the studio, but back in the 40s, after Snow White was made, that back in the 90s, I had a cable TV show where I interviewed collectors and their collectibles here locally. Mm-hmm. And I had a collector of black memorabilia on twice, and he showed me some paperwork, but the film and everything about it has been destroyed. It was made, but it was called Coal, instead of Snow White, it was called Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves. Like Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves, like kind of like that. And that was a movie that was made, and it was apparently even too racist for them to put out, so they destroyed everything. And this guy had like the handbill or the script. I can't remember what he had, but he had something verifying that the thing existed, but it's been like completely wiped from memory. I mean, you can't get more racist than that. I mean, he was a black guy that collected black memorabilia. And I mean, that's a whole different subject, but
right.
I mean, that was like the most racist cartoon you could probably everybody has.
Yeah, remember that Martian guy with like the broom on his head?
Marvin the Martian.
Yeah, I don't think I think it was supposed to be read like, something to do with Indian or something. I don't know.
Oh, really? Because we talked like this.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Maybe I'm miscoding probably, but there is. If you go back and watch some of them, you're like, okay.
And Forgerelli brings up a good point. Has Disney released Song of the South? I remember seeing that as a kid.
Okay,
that had
one.
Some Uncle Remus tales.
Oh boy!
Holy guacamole! No way does that get released. That had some truly repulsive. Now that I'm looking back on my memory of seeing it in movie theaters, that and on the Walt Disney Wonderful World of Disney, on Sunday nights as a kid growing up, they would show it occasionally. But that was crazy racist.
It's like shows the time. Now Disney is putting out Black Panther, Wrinkle in Time, Coco, all these movies. It shows that time changed or improving for the better.
Yeah, Forgerelli asked, what were the crows? The crows were in Dumbo that I remember. Heckle and Jekyll was a different cartoon, but the crows in Dumbo, which you can still get, were I don't know. It's hard to even talk about it without coming off as racist yourself. But they were like, they were like, hello there, what are you doing up here, type of thing. And they were these black crows, and I was like looking at it going, whoa. My daughter's watching this at age 2, and I'm like, holy
shut it down.
Yeah, I think it went way over her head, but I mean, it was really racist.
Yeah, and same with me though. When I was growing up and watching this thing, like there was like Red Indian, like something like a Bugs Bunny was like having a carrot, like "What's up, dog?" And it was some red, like some Native American that he was trying to put under a mine and things like that. Oof, it was not good. And then Yosemite Sam is supposed to be like a southern, like there's racist in that way too. It's like it was like no one was off the hook pretty much.
Right. There was Peter Pan, the movie. They had a song, "What Makes the Red Man Red," and it was full on type of thing. That was, I rolled my eyes at that one too, but. Sam brings up a really good point that you may not know. I have a couple collectibles of this, these drink mix. Sam, what was the name of that drink mix? It wasn't Kool-Aid, but it was a different powdered drink that came out in like 1965. I mean, I have a couple of the mugs. I can't remember, but the flavors were one was like freckle face strawberry, but one of them was Indian orange and showed like an Indian face orange. No, it wasn't Tang. And the other one was Chinese cherry. Shows. Let me go get these mugs because they're and they changed it to Choo Choo Cherry after that. But let me get the name of these mugs and maybe it'll come to me.
Welcome to Race Talk with Jess and Fangirl.
I found these at a flea market. This guy used to be Indian Orange, but then he was called Jolly Ollie Orange.
God,
funny face drinks, exactly. Funny face drinks.
That is not cool.
This is Goofy Grape, and these were drink mixes. Funny face, and they had Chinese cherry, which I said became Choo Choo Cherry, but it was like full on slant eye ponytail. Red face cherry called Chinese cherry. That was 1965 as far as I recall, an Indian orange, and I guess they caught enough crap that they eventually changed it. But I mean, as far as they were concerned, it was okay in 1965 to put that out. Chinese cherry, showing this like completely racist caricature of a Chinese person.
No, I mean, the thing is though, back in like 1960s, like, we can talk about like, crazy. Oh, Jess, you have to talk, Jess.
Oh yeah, so you can see these. Somebody said they were going to drive off the road.
Oh my god. Like we talked, like I think someone mentioned in our group the other day that back in 50s and 60s, you were not allowed to portray Black people in comic books. Like, EC Comics got a lot of flack for having a Black astronaut.
Right, that's right.
Because they were ordered to remove that, and I think they defied that and was eventually bankrupted because of that. I mean, there was, if you want to talk about race and comics and all of that,
that would be a good that would be a good part for this if we could talk about racism in comics, because Forgerelli's bringing up Yellow Kid, which was one of the first comics in the paper, and Ebony White. I should probably interview Forgerelli. He's coming up with a lot of historical racist cartoons and comics. Yeah, that would probably be a good subject.
Right, and
we'd have to do some good research on that.
Yeah, because also Sweet Christmas, like Luke Cage going around saying Sweet Christmas to everyone. Black Panther's beginning, I think a lot of it was not very cool.
Yeah, and Forgerelli brings up a good point that racism was totally ingrained in mainstream culture, which shows how hard it is. I mean, it was part of culture, and that's how hard it is to get it out. You see everybody pointing fingers and saying social justice warriors, things like that, when you're just trying to pull some of the racism out pull it all out. But it's been part of the culture for hundreds of years, and you see that when you put it in 400-year picture, 50 years of trying to equalize the races is a really small chunk of time. You can see that if it took 400 years to create, it's going to take a lot of time to pull it apart, whereas it's almost just a wink of an eye from the civil rights movement to right now, compared to what had happened prior to that it's and
the thing is, like, even if you see some of the commentary that was around with the Black Panther movie coming out, I mean, I went to look at it as like, oh, it's another cool superhero comic book. And I think it's like, obviously race is involved because, it is African-American people were involved in it and a lot of African people were involved in it. But people are like, oh, but they had Blade. So why do they need Black Panther? I'm like,
who said that?
Some people said, right? Like, well, Blade did it first. And I'm like, yeah, but okay, then according to that logic, Christopher Reeve's Superman did it first. Why did we need Brandon Routh? Why did we needed another superhero, like another, what's his name now, the current guy?
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill. Why do we need Captain America movie then? We don't need it because you have it's like it's one of those things like it's okay. It's okay. Like
plus 10 points for you for remembering Brandon Routh's name. That's a good poll. Very good.
I remember. I once again. I was back in 2006. Every movie was awesome. I thought it was a good movie.
Oh, I didn't hate that movie. I didn't. To me, it was Superman on the screen, so it was okay with me. Exactly. I didn't hate it, but he was. I don't know that he was a good Superman.
But the thing is, like, I hated Batman and Robin. Trust me. So it's like
I never saw it.
Like, oh, you never saw Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin?
No, I heard it was so awful that I just never went to see it.
Yes, you need to watch it.
No.
Yes.
No, that's where I knew not to watch it. I knew not to watch Spider-Man 3 with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. Whenever you get more than one or two villains, that's just a recipe for disaster. You need just like one villain, that's enough. And when you start pouring in too many villains, it's
oh my god,
it just weighs down the movie. And
listen, that movie gave us bat nipples.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you, that was something. And even I, as like someone who would be excited about any movie, I'm like, this is a bad movie. Not watching this. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, we could have a whole segment on bad or just movies we could talk about, good movies and bad movies.
Right. Anytime. But like, one of the good movies that I'm going to tell everyone, free publicity doing it, Quiet Place. Quiet Place by John Krasinski from Office fame and Emily Blunt from Devil Wear Prada and 100 different other cool, super cool things that she was in. It's amazing. I just came from watching it before we were doing the show, and oh my god, it's like life without sound. It's pretty much the thesis statement of that.
Now, did he write and direct it too, or does he just star in it?
He wrote the screen. I think he had a story by credit, and he directed it, and it's super well directed. Like they set up everything, like he sets up everything that you were like, oh no, I can see where that's gonna go wrong. Oh no, run for it. So it's like, it's amazing.
Yeah, Sam Klexenberg is bringing up Mickey Rooney's Japanese character in Breakfast with Tiffany's. Well, that one, George Papard's character was supposed to be gay, and he clearly was not gay in Breakfast and Tiffany's. So they really redid that whole movie. It was sort of a classic Audrey Hepburn movie that, in retrospect, was as a sign of the times. It's just I remember. Have you ever seen the show Bewitched?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing a Bewitched episode. That was back in the 60s, like 66 and 67, and I remember seeing it repeated on Nickelodeon or whatever it was on, and there was an Asian character that was clearly a white guy with his eyes, painted, and he's all scrunched up and and it was completely racist. And I was like, couldn't they have just gotten a Asian character to play that in Bewitched? And no, it was the guy from Sound of Music. That's how I recognized him. It was a character from Sound of Music.
Right. That's that reminds me, like a Snugglepuss. It's actually supposed to be a gay character, but he was never mentioned. And now Mark, what's his name? Mark. Oh my god.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote Flintstones.
Mark Russell.
Mark Russell. He's doing. he's redoing that as like for DC Comics now, and he actually made he's gonna be a gay playwright in it. So goes to show. And the thing is, like, yeah, even when I was growing up watching that, I grew up in Bangladesh, and it's not one of the beacon of gay rights. So yeah, it was like I've heard that he's a bit different character. And if you go back and look at it, he's just flamboyantly gay. That's all.
I think it's great. I have a couple of Snagglepuss Pops that I can't wait to pair them up with the comic book.
Stage left.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it shows that time change, and we need more. But we could come back and talk about that. I can talk about that all day.
I think that'd be a great topic for our next chat. We can do tons of research between now and then.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we have had Fangirl on. This has been an excellent episode. We talked for over 2 hours. Good heavens. And we had a lot of good chat, people. Thank you for everybody that participated in the chat. A lot of good comments in the chat between the chatters themselves. That's good, and everybody kept it nice and respectful. So peace and love. I appreciate that. So Fangirl, thanks for being on. I appreciate always talking to you. It's always great.
Anytime.
Good. Well, we will do it again next month, and we'll talk about racist stereotypes in comic books and cartoons and things like that.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Good. Thanks, everybody in the chat for watching. Peace and love. Peace and love.